What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. One place where you won't find any common sense is tribal lunacy. That is one of the things that is really pulling this country apart, pulling it in wrong directions oftentimes, because we're seeing our politicians do things to get back at the other party. And it's getting to a ridiculous level, and it's costing lives. And I think when things begin to start costing lives is when you need to really evaluate what's going on. You know, it's quite simple. You know, we saw early, way back in the earliest 20th century, we started to see the effects of drugs and alcohol, and we started doing things about them. Well, now it's time to start doing things about these tribal instincts we have, where you're either red or you're blue, Democrat, Republican, far right, far left. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Here at Purple, we just want to try to find, answers. I don't care what side those answers come from, and I truly mean that. I want the answers to be the correct answer. How about that? How about we don't worry about what side it comes from? If it works, it works. Anyhow, let's kick this off. So we're starting off in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There was a picture that came out, really made me kind of laugh. Photos emerged Thursday showing a crane removing the sign of a Hampton Inn in Minneapolis area that allegedly refused to accommodate U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE agents and immigration officers. It was branded under the Hilton line, Hampton by Hilton, in a town called Lakeville. And apparently they had denied officers' requests for rooms. And then a civilian journalist went out there and basically recorded them continuing to refuse service even after Hilton instructed them to change that policy. So Hilton stripped them of title. And one of the reasons was the General Services Administration, the GSA. The GSA is an interesting department in the government. They're the ones who are responsible for all the travel, and things along those lines. But they handle travel arrangements, flights, cars, hotels. And they were stripping this hotel of their approved lodging sites, So Hilton probably started to think, oh, crap, we don't want to lose that account. That would be a big one. But, what's going on there in Minneapolis, Minnesota is quite similar to what we're seeing in all the blue states. You have these people who are so desperate to fight against Trump. They're making their money off of the fight against Trump. And they're mobilizing these packs of easily malleable idiots to go out and perform different acts of basically terrorism to some degree. Certainly breaking the law, certainly sticking their necks on the line. One of the people who fell victim to that was this 37-year-old mother of three. Last name was Good. And she was serving as a member of ICE Watch. Right. Okay. Because that's what we really need to concentrate on here. Not trying to help out all of the young people who are just struggling to get through life. No. We got to go out and, as they say, monitor and track ICE, Federal Immigration Enforcement Operations. That's fine. You want to monitor and track. That's great. Whatever. But interfere and oppose. And they are present in multiple sanctuary cities across the country because they know that they have the politicians and the police sort of behind them. That, the people who are running the show are kind of like, yeah, you go out and you piss off Trump's people. Because where was all this when Obama was doing it? Now, before, obviously, times have changed in the way we are going about immigration enforcement right now. It is a completely different thing than it was under Obama's, reign, for lack of a better word. But part of the problem is that, ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, is now facing state and city governments that refuse to hand over people who are in the country illegally. So now they are forced to go out and find them. And that's what's leading to this. Going back to the woman who was shot and killed, right or wrong, The shooting, right or wrong, we could debate that. It's really easy to look at slowed down frame by frame video and go, oh, the officer could have gotten out of the way. But this officer had been dragged by a car not too long ago in June, and he was dragged for over 100 yards, which is a football field. Okay, that's terrifying. We could always argue maybe he shouldn't have been on duty, blah, 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 blah. But he was cleared for duty. He was out there. And in the heat of the moment, when law enforcement is conducting law enforcement business, it is not a good idea to interfere with them, regardless of what badge they're wearing. It is not a good idea to stick your neck on the line to protect whoever this is that you're trying to protect. They would like you to believe, and they would like their supporters and their followers and their little militia, as I'll call them, they want them to believe that they are protecting a mother of 3 who was just forced to move to the United States illegally to provide for her children. But that's not always the case. When they're out there setting off alarms and whistles and alerting people to ISIS's presence, they are also abetting criminals. That's what they're doing. If there's a guy there who's wanted in his home country for murder and we're trying to pick him up and you start honking your horn and the guy runs out the back door and escapes, you have helped criminals escape. And that's what is actually happening. I may not agree with everything ICE is doing or how they're going about it, but I also recognize the fact that they've been forced into this situation by these stupid sanctuary policies. They put a mother of 3 kids out on the firing line. And she was blocking traffic. She was blocking law enforcement. And she was, for all intents and purposes, going to continue to interfere with law enforcement, creating a dangerous situation. They wanted to arrest her. She tries to drive off and she got shot. What the fuck was she doing there? And then we come back to the tribal side of everything where, all of a sudden, the Democrats are concerned for the officers on January 6th. And they feel like, oh, Ashley Babbitt, who got shot in the face for climbing through a window, well, she shouldn't have been climbing through that window. But not the same when it's ICE. When it's ICE, the police are the bad guys, and the woman who got shot is the hero. This is the same town, of course, that tried to make George Floyd into the next Martin Luther King. Because people are so blinded by their tribalism nowadays that they can't just see what's in front of their face. They have to contextualize it some way so that they can make it a positive for their side and a negative for the other side. Right? That's what they do. I mean, I don't think anybody at January 6th should have been beating up officers, but I also don't think the officers should have shot Ashley Babbitt in the face. But I understand that in the heat of the moment, that's what happens. That's why you should not interfere with police. That's why you should not try to storm buildings where police are. That's why you shouldn't do it, let alone the fact that it's against the law. What the woman who got shot in Minneapolis was doing was illegal. She was impeding law enforcement. She was aiding and abetting criminals. Look at Portland. Portland's in tears right now because 2 people who are being picked up by ICE for being involved with Trey Dangwa and running a prostitution ring were shot. Oh, prostitution, it's a victimless crime. Tell that to the young girls who are forced into that life, pumped full of drugs, and their lives are over, oftentimes because they die around the age of 30, when they're all used up. And they're crying over these 2 people who tried to run over officers and was shot. Look, a weapon is a weapon. That's what I look at it as. I think most average intelligence people could see that. It doesn't matter what the weapon is. If you're trying to kill officers, they will kill you first. I mean, is that a great way to run society? Well, I don't know, but what are you supposed to do? Let all the officers die? What do you want? You want the criminals to survive, or do you want the officers to survive? Now, this good lady, I don't think she was a criminal. I think she was brainwashed. And I think she was brainwashed by a bunch of people who are making money by running ICE Watch, but they're not the ones taking the actual risk. I've talked about this time and time again on this show, that what they're doing is they're taking impressionable young people, disenfranchised people, they're whipping them into a needless frenzy, and then they're sending them out there to endanger their own lives. Meanwhile, they're collecting a fat paycheck for running Ice Watch. Ice Watch should be designated as a terrorist organization now, because they are no longer simply being a watchdog. They are being an attack dog. And the only reason they're being an attack dog is because their side is blue and the ICE agents are working for the red side. But they're not. The ICE agents are working for the United States of America. You may disagree with how they're going about it, but keep in mind, part of the problem is that sanctuary cities and Joe Biden's 4-year reign of open borders let in so many unvetted immigrants. So many. Now, I sympathize with some of them. I know some of them just came here for a better life, and they're law-abiding, and they're just trying to make a living for their family, send money back home to keep their grandparents alive. I get that. And I'm all for immigration reform. I'm all for figuring out ways to let the lower tier people in. And by lower tier, I mean their earning potential. I understand it's expensive to immigrate here fully. I get that. We can change that. We can have programs for that. Put them on paper, vet them. I don't mind. I don't mind if we waive the cost. I don't mind if charities help people immigrate to the United States to get a blue-collar job. I don't want just rich immigrants coming in. But at the same time, I want to make sure that everybody who comes through here has been vetted, and when they get here, they're on their best behavior. I really don't think that's too much to ask. So let's move on. Iran. Right now, Iran is just falling apart. The people have gotten sick of the rule. They've gotten sick of what's going on with the economy. They've gotten sick of their government picking fights with all the people of the world. I mean, Iran is firmly on the side of the bad guy. They just are. They're in bed with places like North Korea, China, Russia, places that do not have the world's best interest at heart. Then they're pissing off the one country that does have people's best interests at heart, the United States. And I think the citizens are tired of that. But they're just opening fire on them now. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if we need to get involved in Iran, because Donald Trump has been quite vocal in telling the Iranians, hey, you better stop shooting or we'll start shooting, you know? And we already saw what he did down in Venezuela, you know? But Venezuela, another great example. People are up in arms about us snatching Maduro. They want to say that Trump stole an election, but Maduro, who was proven to have stolen an election, oh, he's okay, we shouldn't interfere. But that's only because it's not a Democrat going after Maduro. Biden tried to go after Maduro. Biden put bounties on him. He was indicted in 2020. So you could see how the tribalism is dictating how we go. And the media fucking loves it. The media is at almost all of the problems that we have can trace back to the media. That's going to be a whole nother subject, though, about how they brainwash us into believing things. But right now, Iran is ripe for revolution, and we may need to get involved. You know, we're starting to reach, 300 something people have been killed. The internet has been completely shut down. They are tightening their controls. I mean, just early Saturday morning, there was a protest in Tehran, and there was about 217 protesters killed by live ammunition. But see, the big difference between the protesters in Iran and the protesters here in the United States is it isn't about party lines. It's about freedom. And that's what they're looking for in Iran, freedom. All right, let's go back to United States here. Another religious king, so to speak, Newsom, worshiping at the altar of extreme progressivism, the religion of tax and spend and don't ask questions. And that's the problem that I have. I understand the tax and spend part of it. Okay, we could live with that. But when the money is being stolen by bad guys, see, we work hard for our money. And then they tax us and criminals get a hold of the money. That's the kind of stuff that's getting really, really old. Federal prosecutors are now calling Newsom the king of fraud as Trump launches a California corruption probe. And you go, oh, okay, there's Trump being tribalistic. Well, the problem with that is that there's there's evidence behind going after Gavin Newsom in the state of California. California has spent $24 billion in the last 5 years on the homelessness problem, and there's no accounting for it. Newsom claims that it's a 9% reduction, but here's the kicker. All of our homeless numbers are estimates. There are cases where volunteers go around and look for tents and encampments, and then they guesstimate how many people live in that tent. Oh, that's a big tent. There must be 4. Oh, that's a small tent. There must be 1. Those aren't real numbers, okay? We see it every day when we drive around. It is not getting any better, all right? It is not getting any better at all. And where did that money go? I mean, that's just it. Where did that money go? And so, the U.S. Attorney for Central District of California, Bill Aseli, launched a task force to investigate corruption that will focus on the homeless services. And they've already taken down 2 men who are using real estate projects to exploit the state homelessness system for personal profit. And, of course, Newsom's press office pushed back, writing on X that the governor has blocked over $125 billion in fraud, arrested criminal parasites leeching off of taxpayers, and protected taxpayers from the exact kind of scam artist Trump celebrates, excuses, and pardons. Okay, so we have to throw in a Trump shot there. If he's blocked $125 billion, what does that mean for the grand total? How much has gotten by? And where was that blocked? Where was that blocked? They offer no explanation for where they come up for that number. J.D. Vance also brought it up that California openly advertises using taxpayer funds to provide Medicaid to illegal immigrants. California, more than almost any other state, has been so glaring and obvious about the fact that they are giving welfare benefits to illegal aliens. They're getting rich off the generosity of the American taxpayer. The political corruption that enables it has to stop. Yes. I mean, I'm a compassionate individual. I don't want people to suffer. But at the same time, I'm not going to give all of this bounty to people who are essentially gate crashers. I mean, that's like letting the person who cut in line at Disneyland ride the ride twice. I don't even understand that philosophy. I don't understand that at all. It is not progressive. What it is stupid. And it's just trying to draw people to California so that California could inflate its population numbers. But keep in mind, for every one person who came here with a legitimate reason, you have other people who came here for criminal gain. Or they came here because they were fleeing charges in their country. They came here to scam the system. They're using false IDs, which can wreck other people's lives. Is that really what we're supposed to be? Is the United States just supposed to be the country that everybody takes advantage of? Because that's what it looks like. Well, if you haven't heard, Tim Walz is not seeking re-election, and Gavin Newsom cannot seek re-election. So Gavin had his final state of the state. And, he was talking about the pandemic and, all of those things. And he says in his speech, I say things that may be piercing some of you, but it's not intended to demean, not intended to divide, but I'm speaking from my heart. Oh, okay. He then went on to say that California is a liberal, stable counterweight to the chaotic and lawless White House, which he claimed has been captured by wealth. The fuck do you think California is? What? Come on, man. To quote the great Joe Biden there. He went on to say, understanding the lessons of the past in California, we probably built one of the most progressive tax systems in the nation. One that asked the higher income residents to pay a little bit more. They're going to look for 5% of their total assets without punishing people who are making a bit less. It comes down to a simple question. Who do you stand for? The rich and powerful, the most well-connected, or the bus driver, the janitor, the special education teacher working overtime to support their families? Well, Gavin, you support the rich people. That's what you do. You support the rich people, and your state supports the rich people. California, second in the nation for the average income tax at 4.87%. Only New York is higher there, right? Where are they on sales tax? Well, we're 8th on the list for sales tax, but that's California sales tax, 8.85%. So after they've taxed you almost 8% of your income, they tax you on 8% of the money that you spend. So that's 16% of your money down the rat hole. Then you go to gas. Well, we're number one in gas costs. And out of that, $1.26 is just pure state taxes, fees, and costs associated with environmental programs. California is bankrupting its citizens to be the leaders in the environmental cleanup. That isn't going to make a damn bit of difference until the rest of the world gets on board. And why again? Well, why is it so expensive to buy gas here? We have to have an expensive blend of gasoline. And we don't have enough refineries. No, we don't. Not just the taxes. Senate Bill X1-2, signed into law in June 2023, authorized the California Energy Commission to set a cap on gross gasoline refining margin, which means you can only refine so much gas. Then they pass X2-1 that requires refineries to maintain minimum inventories of fuel. You could only make so much, and some of it has to go into storage. So, of course, that's going to make high gas prices. And gas prices just absolutely strain household budgets, especially considering you have to commute to work. And trains are not going to get you to work. Trains and buses, even that combination, is not going to get you to most jobs. And because, of all of these rules and regulations, San Francisco is going to go from 5 refineries to 2 refineries. And that also affects jet fuel prices, which again drives up business costs. Man, there are things that can be done. We need to repeal some of these margin caps, get rid of this minimum inventory, and start getting some of the oil out of the ground. Invest in the kind of refineries that we need. Okay, there's different types of crude oil, and we're not necessarily set up to refine enough of it. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But again, Gavin Newsom says he's, here for the people, but we are second in rent, only to Hawaii. We have way more buildable land. But Gavin Newsom and his cronies have created so many rules and regulations, like we've talked about here before. There are areas of this state where you will spend over $100,000 before you even begin building, just on fees and regulations, to do all of these things that they feel good, but they don't really accomplish much. We have these wildlife laws here, and great. Now we have coyotes roaming through the city. That's wonderful. Well, we're 9th on the list when it comes to auto insurance. Yeah. At least we're not number 1 there. We're number 3 on groceries. The only places that are more expensive for groceries, Hawaii and Alaska. And both of them have really good reasons for that. Isolation. We're number 2 in overall in expensive states to live. Gavin Newsom likes to brag about us being the 4th largest economy, but because everything is so taxed and regulated, it drives up costs. It absolutely drives up costs. Transportation costs overall. We are the worst state. Grocery, we're number 3. Healthcare, we're 16th. So there we're all right. We're second in home value. We're the 3rd largest state. Where's all the housing? Groceries cost 12% more than the national average. Utilities, 41.9% higher than the average. Transportation, 41% higher than the rest of the nation. And that is because of Gavin Newsom. He says he's there for the janitors and stuff, but no, he listened to the teachers union, shut down the schools, put these people on unemployment and COVID relief and all that bullshit. But the teachers were getting paid because union. He killed businesses here in California. But he kept open the things that he wanted and the things that he wanted to do. His kids were still going to school. He points out in his State of the State that they sued the United States government, right? Because, they were owed money for illegally frozen federal resources that belong to our schools, hospitals, elders. Right, okay. And he says, we won requests for emergency relief and affirm the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. Right, as long as it isn't the Second Amendment. He did say one thing, though, that I will agree with him on. It's shameful that we allowed 5 private equity firms in Manhattan to become the biggest landlords here in our cities in California. But you know what, Gavin? I bet you were behind that. You're for the rich. You come from the rich. You're for the rich. The Democrats are for the rich. Do not pretend that you're for the working class person, because you are not protecting that nurse who has to wade through the homeless encampments to take a fucking bus and hopefully not get attacked as she walks the rest of the way to her job. You do not make the state safer with your policies. You do not make the California affordable with your policies. The only way to make California affordable is to remove all of the bullshit that the Democrats have put on over the last couple decades. That's what they do. They regulate. They tell us we can't even use plastic bags here anymore. So now all these people are going to be carrying home paper bags. And if you come from the land of paper bags like I did way back when, you know that shit rips and stuff falls on the ground. And now you got to buy it all over again. So how does that help? How does that help? That's your accomplishment? You're going to fight for the planet's environment when you already know the end result is negligible, if at all. Clean up the plastic bags. Renew campaigns teaching people not to fucking litter. And for God's sakes, get back to some basics at school. We're running around here in our schools worrying more about mathematics than we do about home economics and financial literacy. We're raising just an absolute state of dummies right now. And you cheer because the plastic bags aren't in the stores anymore. And then you want to talk about being there for the janitors and the bus drivers. Bullshit. You are there for rich lobbyists. Rich, entitled lobbyists. You're there for Hollywood celebrities. You're there for big tech billionaires. That's why you oppose the 5%. You don't oppose the 5% because it might chase people out of the state, or it's unfair, or it's just more money for you guys to lose. No. You oppose it because those are your people. That's who you want to be, Newsom. Stop fucking lying. As we've seen recently in Venezuela, the United States is phenomenal at overwhelming air defenses and snatching assholes in the middle of the night. Why can't we apply that laser focus, concise operations to our internal matters? Because we are so divided. That's the pure and simple reason. We are so divided. We have a mental health crisis in this country, and our state and local and federal leaders are not doing a damn thing about it. Every time we try to do anything better here in this state, it is opposed by somebody. And those people have the money, and Newsom sways to them. For me, it starts with education. All right. We have stripped away, like I said, those useful electives in place of this, like these bloated pensions that these teachers are getting, negotiated by the unions who own Gavin Newsom. The teachers put the onus on the parent, except we're politically motivated. Have you ever noticed that it seems like we live in a world where the teachers say, well, you should teach your kids about this. You should teach your kids about financial literacy. I'm going to teach them about sexual identity. It's flip-flopped. Teachers are not what they were back in the 1980s. They just simply aren't. They're not allowed to get involved. Schools do not stand up for the bullied. They will punish the bully and the bullyee or whatever for when they fight back. These are the kind of upside down ways of thinking that California and a lot of the nation are going with right now. This upside down metric of, oh, well, we graduate a lot of people. Doesn't matter if they're stupid, because then they're going to go to college and that's where they're going to get educated. No, that's where they're going to get brainwashed. And it's this brainwashing that continues the divide. It's the media continuing the divide. The media knows that one side wants to see that the officer was right to shoot that lady, and then the other side wants to see that the lady was in the right and the officer should be burned at the stake. So they run articles on both sides, and everybody profits. But you know who's not profiting? Americans. I say it all the time here. United we stand, divided we fall. And right now we're falling. And we're falling for all of these massive corporations and these money-hungry NGOs and nonprofits and lobby groups who are getting rich off of this divide. Instead of us standing up and going, hey, California should not be a sanctuary state. If somebody's committed a crime and they're not here legally, they need to go. Pure and simple. The homeless people, we've tried compassion. We've tried leaving them alone. We've tried not forcing people to get help. Well, it's time to try something different because the wheels are coming off and they're coming off rapidly. And when those wheels come off, we are going to have a massive crash. It's pure and simple. If we do not become more purple, we are doomed. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. Keep your head up. And you know what? Instead of worrying about all this shit, why don't you put on some Balu Brigada and dance it out? Peace, y'all.